And now I'd like to open up questions, comments.
Hey there, Rob. I wanted to ask two questions that may seem diametrically opposed. Um, the first is, you've just got a simple code smell rule just in your head. There's an exception that doesn't have a log statement. I'm going to instantly raise a flag. And that's a simple example, but there are different kind of hard rules that you may go by as you review code. Um, when the question is, when do we uphold those types of rules versus the second question, when do we promote some hacky type stuff? If I were to give an example of that, we may prime a dependency inside of a static initializer so that it is ready when the class is being called in runtime. So does that make sense? That dependency prime may always throw an exception. And maybe there's thorough commentary on why it's there. But that said, it's a hack all the same. You may have some other hacks that the developer may have some other hack that they use. When are we going hard and fast? There's no situation in which an exception doesn't have a log statement versus when are we saying, hey, do something outside the norm here, and that's okay?
That's an excellent question. And that is a part of what the code review conversation piece of it is. And where even if you have automated tools, there still needs to be some human potentially intervention or interaction within it. Because within those things, like within those coding tools and some of the automated rules you can put together are things like, if we've got a code review tool that's a developer code review tool, like Fisheye and Crucible are an example. When you combine that, I guess it's Crucible is really the code review tool. You can set it up and say, hey, is any commit is going to be held, and you can't complete a pull request until there are X number of code reviews that are done on the code. And I've worked in environments that have exactly that. And those are the cases where you may look at it and say, okay, we've got to do a code review, but a person can pass a code review and say, yes, it passes, even though the code maybe is not up to snuff. And so we want to be able to allow for that. But also I think there's a lot of time, well, there's two cases. One, sometimes it's a hack and we know it and we're going to accept it anyways. And it's the 80-20 rule. And that's where we, as part of that process, is just note that this is a hack and we put a little to do in there or put some sort of a technical debt task in the backlog to say, hey, we did this. It's what we need right now, but at some point we want to revisit it. And there may be somewhere that's just part of the code review is that we come back and we put a comment on that and say, yes, this is a hack, but it makes sense. And it's not worth for us to try to make up a word, de-hackify it because of the cost or because of scalability or performance or the rare cases where this actually matters. So it becomes this is definitely where there has to be human intervention. There is human decision that goes into it. And I think that's part of your environment is how much do we accept hacks and workarounds and how much do we want to make sure that we either don't accept them or that we highlight those as things that we do need to come back and clean up. And then it goes to, the age-old thing of when do we actually go back and fix it? Are we an organization that says we'll fix it later and then never does? Or are we an organization that says we're going to fix it later and there's a certain pressure point where we say we've got a lot of stuff we need to fix, so we're going to do a fix release or a technical debt release or something along those lines. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So it's just kind of finding that balance with the human part of it all. I like that.
Yes. And it's something it may be something that you review on a regular basis. Maybe when you first turn on code reviews, you have a lower barrier. And then as you get better, you raise that barrier. It's just, and particularly this is really good in like the agile sprint world, is that maybe early on you have something that's got very, like for example, everything's a warning. But then as you go further into your sprints, at some point you start turning stuff on and say, oh, if this occurs, now it's an error. Eclipse itself has got really good settings built in for it, where you can change that with a lot of compiler settings and things like that, where you can say, oh, this is like deprecated. It's a great example. I can, in a lot of environments, say if something's deprecated, then I just want to be warned about it. But there's other places, there's also an option where I can say, if it's a deprecation, it's an error. I need to fix that, as opposed to just say, oh yeah, that's something I want to look at later. So it can be a sliding scale essentially, or at least maybe not, but a changing scale over time. Excellent question.
Good deal. And I just want to.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate that cross training. I mean, too many people shy away from a code review for how they may be, I don't want to say it's not exposure, but they may not be as confident in their skill set or whatever. But that's how you get better, getting other developers to suggest different ways and learning from others. So.
That's that. I will piggyback on that, is that sometimes one of the things I did not bring up in the presentation, but it's a good point, is that sometimes code reviews are limited to people in the same silo. So for example, if you've got a team where you've got some, let's say you've got some front end people, some middle tier people, and some database developers, sometimes it's that the code review it's just, database developers do database code reviews, middle tier do middle tier reviews, front end do front end reviews. I think part of the value of cross training is to have the other types of developers be part of the code review. It may be initially, it probably will slow things down a little bit, because they're having to understand maybe some differences in that other tier or that other functional area. But over time, it's going to help them. At least they've been exposed to those other areas. They have some knowledge about it, and they're even going to be able to pick up some of the things to look for in those other coding areas. So it is a way to get people out of their coding comfort zone a little bit, and cross train them even beyond just other areas that, like other code within their team or their silo. And also to, so they're actually now seeing the whole development group and how they are developing and getting exposed to that. So yeah, it's great to point that out. Other questions and comments? Going once, going twice. I don't hear any. So that wraps this up a little bit. So not a little bit, but completely. So as always, I appreciate the time and sitting down and going through this, not only for us, from the developer point of view, but also for us, the greater community of developers, is that when we get together, when we spend some time making ourselves better, it helps not only us, but the next guy or gal that comes behind us and has to look at our code or look at the code of other people that we've influenced. So, it's like a, pebble in a pond kind of thing, is that as we get better, our code's a little better, other people are exposed to our code, they get a little bit better, and it just builds and builds and builds. So this is something that definitely helps all of us. It's not just a selfish pursuit. But as always, if you have any other questions, if something comes up, if you want to know more about this, if you want other links or anything like that, or just in general learn more about us or what we can do or what you can do, you can shoot email at info@developernoor.com. You can go out to the developernoor.com site. We have a contact us form. We have at RBC Posts is where we do our Twitter. Sometimes we do that. We had a Developernoor one. We'll probably go back and turn back on a Developernoor just because of the topics. RBC Posts is much more overall software development. We may get a little more deeper. We may split it up and add another Twitter at some point. So just sort of keep an eye on that. That'll probably be out on the Developer site or in some sort of a newsletter. If we do that, we have a YouTube channel. Just go out to YouTube and search for Developerpreneur, and you will find it. There's not too much on that. Also, I've got a link here if you want to check that out. Vimeo, you can go to vimeo.com/developerpreneur. You can see some of the videos. YouTube or shorter form, those tend to be, typically the goal is 15 to 20 minutes. And